Hey guys, it's Miss Arlequin, and in today's lesson we're going to talk about how to write and deliver an effective speech. So our learning targets for today is I want to familiarize you with the dynamics of a speech, review some misnomers or misunderstandings about giving speeches, hopefully reduce your fears and any reservations you have about giving a speech. We'll end with some preparation for the first speech of the school year, and hopefully you'll go off with some abilities and some desire to give a really strong speech to your classmates. So why do we have speeches? In general, giving a speech is very similar to writing. There are three main reasons. Some speeches are to inform, some are to persuade, and some are to entertain. Usually whenever you're going to do a new kind of writing form or speech form, it's always a good idea to see a model. So think about any speeches that you have heard that really inspired you or made you want to listen. And we'll be looking at a very famous speech from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which is well known for being one of the greatest speeches of all time. And hopefully from that speech we'll get some ideas of what makes a really great speech. Now, in general, a speech is just anything where you are expressing or describing your thoughts, your feelings, your point of view out loud. It could be to one person, it could be to many people, and it's usually some kind of public address. Different from a dialogue, because a dialogue would involve people responding to you. So speeches are really meant to be carried by the one person who is speaking. Now, there are a lot of misunderstandings when it comes to giving speeches. First off, only you are going to know if you look or sound nervous, unless it's extreme stage fright, where you're not even able to speak and you're shaking so visibly that people can notice. For the most part, when people are nervous giving a speech, it's only apparent to the speaker themselves. And almost every speaker has some kind of form of nervousness, even people who have been doing it over and over again. They still get nervous when they get on stage, but your anxiety can be useful. You can use it as like an energy boost to help you power through the speech. Just remember that not every word is going to be heard by your audience or understood or even thought about. With very few exceptions, an audience does not really hinge on every word that a speaker says. They may only really focus on the beginning and the ending and get the gist of the speech. And most importantly, you must remember that you are in control of the outcome of your speech. Now, how do we prevent anxiety? There are some things you can do to be a little less nervous, and one of the most basic and obvious ones is just to know how to give a presentation, to know what makes good public speaking, and being prepared. Obviously, if you get up in front of a group of people and you have no idea what you're going to say, you're going to find yourself more nervous than somebody who did prepare. So, in general, no matter what you're doing in life, it's always a good idea not to procrastinate. Don't wait until the last minute to be prepared for your speech. The next thing you can do is make sure that you practice as many times as you can so that you feel comfortable with the words you're going to say. When you're actually giving the speech, you want to focus on your audience and listen and look for support. There's always going to be encouraging faces out there in the crowd. Make sure that you're very focused on the message that you're trying to deliver and that you know how you're going to introduce the speech and what your conclusion is going to be. Always think positively. Having a negative outlook can affect anything that you do in life, so you want to, right before a speech and during the speech, make sure you visualize your success. Give yourself mental pep talks. Be encouraging. Know that you can do it. It's just one maybe hurdle that you have to overcome, and you're going to be able to do it, so have faith in yourself. There's also physical things you can do to calm down, like deep breathing and relaxation exercises. And really, the more you practice, the better you're going to become. So take advantage of any time you're able to speak in front of crowds. So even just participating in class, that's a very comfortable environment. And the more you do that, the more likely you're going to be comfortable giving speeches in front of your class or to other people. Now, what goes into a speech is pretty much the same as any formal writing assignment. Just like an essay, you want to have an introduction, you want to have a body, and you want to have a conclusion. In essence, you are going to tell them what you're going to tell them, then you're going to tell it to them, And then you're going to tell them what it is that you just told them. In your introduction, you want to draw attention to you and your speech. You want to introduce the subject. You want to capture your audience's attention, because anybody that is speaking to a crowd that's not interested is not really communicating their message very well. You want to give the audience a reason to listen. Make them realize why your speech is important. You want to build up to the main reasons for your speech. So again, you're previewing what specific topics you're going to go into. And you do that by summarizing the main ideas. And if you can, you establish your credibility. So if you're speaking on a topic, it should be because you are an expert in that topic in some way. So you might want to let your audience know what makes you an expert. Simply, an introduction has to present a reason, a grasp onto your audience from which they'll want to listen to what you have to say. Now, the body is the meat of your speech. It's the middle. That's the main portion, and it's the reason why you're talking, maybe even the reason why your audience is there. In your body, you're going to develop it by narrowing your topic with more specific details. You're going to really show the purpose of your speech, so you're really proving what your main points are. You're developing your central idea and the main ideas that you outlined in your introduction. And then finally, conclusion. This is where you are wrapping things up, you're summarizing the speech, you're re-emphasizing what the main idea of your overall speech was, and you want to try to do that in a memorable way, because conclusions are the things that people tend to remember, because it's the last thing they heard. You want to motivate your audience, so you might want to call them to action, let them know what they should do with their lives, or a very specific part of their lives, now that they're done listening to your speech. And overall, you're just kind of closing it up, wrapping things up. Now, let's talk a little bit more about actually delivering a speech. There are two types of communication in life. There's nonverbal communication and there's verbal communication. So verbal communication is everything that's spoken out loud. And we control verbal communication through the volume. You always want to make sure that you are speaking at an adequate volume so people can hear you. Obviously, if they can't hear you, then your speech is not successful. There's articulation, so you want to make sure that you are speaking very clearly and your words can be understood. There's dialect, so there's also a difference between a speech that you give in a more casual setting, where you might use slang or internet lingo, and more formal language. So if you are presenting to a group of classmates or coworkers, you want to use more formal language. Pronunciation, making sure that you are speaking clearly, that your words can be understood, and you're using the correct pronunciation of words. The pitch of your voice. Sometimes you might speak a little lower or you might speak a little higher, depending on what you want to emphasize or what emotion you're trying to communicate. There's the rate of speech. You don't want to talk too slow because that could be boring, and you don't want to talk too fast because that also can end up causing people to not understand what you're saying. And you also can use pauses very strategically. So knowing when to pause to let people kind of think about what you just said. That's a very powerful technique. Nonverbal communication is all about how you engage people through your facial expressions and your body language. So making eye contact, having the ability to scan over your audience and make eye contact with different people, not just one person the entire time. That captures people's interest, makes them think you're talking directly to them. Gestures with your hands is another way to engage people. Instead of standing in one place, moving around the stage or the front of the classroom. Making sure you have good posture so you're standing up straight. That also affects the volume of your voice. People that slouch and look to the ground are not going to be heard as clearly. Facial expressions, making sure they're appropriate. Again, you want to be engaging, and part of that is through your presence. Your personal appearance, so you want to look nice when you're giving a speech. You don't want to come in dressed in pajamas or come dressed in your baggiest, unwashed clothing. And then finally, just your vibe with the audience. Obviously, the better an audience is, the more comfortable you're going to be. And when an audience and a speaker have a good vibe, the speech usually ends up being better. Some general speech giving tips. Again, I can't stress this enough. You have to speak up. Make sure that you speak a little louder than normal conversation when you're giving your speech, but not too loud. We don't want to use playground voices. Make sure you slow down. You want the people listening to your speech to be able to understand it. So you don't want to rush. You want to make sure that you're being understood. Enunciate your words. Don't slur. Don't mumble. Don't look to the ground. Don't face the smartboard. If you face the smartboard is the one who's getting your speech and not your audience. And finally, again, be confident. You can do it. You just have to believe in yourself. Everybody can give a good speech, and the more you do it, the better and better you get at it.